Joining us now on the VIN podcast, renowned lobbyist Ezra Friedlander. Ezra made headlines this week after he said he's trying to develop a relationship with squad members, Ilhan, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, and he has gotten a lot of backlash from the Frum community. Ezra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And yeah, I'm happy. I want to give you a chance to explain your side of things. And I first want to mention that whether somebody agrees or disagrees with you, and I'll ask you some questions, my thoughts, but I felt that it was unfair that you were personally attacked by members of our community because you're somebody who nobody would disagree. You do many, many good things for the klal. Your motives are sincere, you're ehrlich, and we should be able to disagree about policy, disagree about something like this, but not personally insult people with whom we disagree.
Look, that's the life I chose, right? I always maintain when you do something in the public square, expect for people to criticize you in the public square. So it's no skin off my back, as they say.
Okay, as we've seen, yeah, look, that certainly turns out to be the case very often, and sometimes it's unfair, but I guess that's a healthy attitude. So do you understand why there's so much backlash, why people are offended, and would you agree that Ilhan, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib have made anti-Semitic statements in the past?
That you don't need my haskama. You don't need me to agree with you on that. It's obvious, and yeah, I mean, obviously, both made statements that are beyond the pale. Absolutely.
Do you think they're anti-Semites?
Anti-Semites, the word anti-Semite to me means that I hate you because you are a Jew. I don't think they see a Jew walking down the street and say, I hate that person. I think it's more complicated than that.
Okay. I think people might take some issue specifically, and we will get to your sort of perspective and what you're trying to accomplish, but
yeah, I'm not crawling into their hearts. Hate is a very, a lot of people have hate. I have hate. I don't know about you. Most people have a certain level of prejudice. What's the word?
Prejudice.
People have that. People have that in them. It's natural. I mean, we all have to learn Hasidic Svurim or Mrs. Svurim to be able to overcome that. But I have some of that. Not only I'm talking about people in our own community. You look at this person a certain way, you look at that person a certain way, but I'm not a hater. I don't hate people. So it's a very, when you call the word anti-Semite is a very strong word. We use it so liberally. We use it so like, Ashra Yoshba Beisechu. You got to be very careful how you use that word.
So I happen to agree, anti-Semite is overused, and that does then diminish the meaning of it when it really is accurate. And I just want to, and I don't think Ilhan Omar has studied too many Hasidic Sforim. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Some of her statements, as you said, beyond the pale, she equated Israel to Hamas and the Taliban, and she has shown very little remorse. She made a comment infamously about the Benjamins, and then she recently said on CNN, I didn't know there was an anti-Semitic trope. She always claims ignorance as somehow that's supposed to be some sort of excuse.
No, it's inexcusable.
Okay. So we have you on record about that, very clear and categorical about that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So in light of that, I think what everybody's wondering is, what are you looking to accomplish? I mean, and walk us through. You were at this Iftar, which is at this, I guess, post-Ramadan fast gathering, and you want to develop a relationship. There's many, many politicians out there who don't have this track record, don't have this history. So what are you trying to accomplish by developing this relationship?
I never said I wanted to develop a relationship. I said I laid the foundation for possible communication down the road. If you go to my tweet, you have to be very careful when you write a tweet because you only have a certain amount of characters. If you go to my tweet, and I would appreciate if you would read it or I can read it, I basically did not set out on a mission to establish a relationship with Omar or Tlaib. That was not my intention. That was not my objective. That was not my goal. It is not my goal. I am a lobbyist that spends a considerable amount of time in Washington. I was invited to meet Congressman Andrew Carson in his office for a meeting. He couldn't make it because he was hosting the Iftar that evening, so he was busy. So the person who was arranging that meeting said, "Hey, there's going to be an Iftar. Would you like to come meet the congressman at the Iftar?" And I said, "If I'm invited, sure, I'd love to." So she told me, this person said, "I'm going, you'll be my guest." I said, "Is that okay?" She said, "Yes." I cleared it. "You're coming as a guest." As I was walking into the Capitol Visitor Center, that's part of the Capitol complex, I said, "By the way, who's coming to this event?" And she said, "Oh, you'll have imams and you'll have congressional staffers, and you'll also have members of Congress you'll have Rashida Tlaib and you'll have Ilhan Omar." I said, "Oh, interesting." And literally that was as I was walking down the steps. If you know how the Capitol Visitor Center looks, you walk down, it's like an underground complex underneath the U.S. Capitol. It's this vast array of meeting rooms, and it's like where all the tours originate. They have events, and that was. I didn't wake up in the morning and say, "Today I'm going to establish a relationship with those two individuals."
Okay.
When I walked into the room, everyone was lining up to get the food because it was like sunset. It was like Shkia. That's when they break their fast. I walked into the room. Obviously, I had eaten that day, and I can't eat the food regardless.
Right.
And it wasn't a big crowd. There were maybe, in total, maybe 50, 60 people in total, but there were like 40, maybe 30 or 40 people lining up to eat. And they were there, like walking around, and I introduced myself. That was it wasn't a meeting. It wasn't we were sitting down to break bread. It was, they broke bread. I was there just to observe. I was there, and I figured, I said to myself, and I believe it was the right thing to do. My objective is always to meet people. My objective is always to develop relationships with members of Congress as a lobbyist. My objective is to establish relationships. But obviously, with those two individuals, it's a little bit more complicated. So I said to myself, in Hebrew, they say hizdamnut. There was an opportunity that presented itself. I said, "Hey, let me introduce myself." And I walked over to them. First it was Omar, then it was Tlaib. And I said, I said what my name was. "My name is Ezra Friedlander. I'm a lobbyist. I'm here on Capitol Hill." I said, "I don't want to, there's obviously a lot that I could say that I disagree with you, but this is not the right time to do that."
You said that? You actually said that to them?
I said it to both. I said, that's how I introduced myself. I said, "But you do have an important voice. You have a powerful voice, more than you think." And I said that for a reason. So words matter. And then we spoke about, I said, it's Ramadan, and I live next to a Muslim community, a Pakistani community. Years ago, we didn't hear about Ramadan. Today, we hear more people wear it more on their sleeves. And and she said, Ezra is a name that's from the Bible. It's the prophet. I think she said her daughter's name was Isra with similar name. It was a very, just a nice civil conversation, and we didn't get into anything controversial. I didn't praise her. I didn't condone what she was saying. In many ways, it was a difficult conversation because obviously there was a lot that I would have liked to have a discussion about, but it wasn't the right time to do that. But yeah, I'm going on. So
I want to read the tweet because, like you mentioned earlier, that's fair. Okay, well, I'm reading the part where after you mentioned the Iftar, you said
I think you should read it in its entirety if you don't mind. If you
can. No, I'm gonna pull it up here. It'll take a minute to pull it up. But while
I have it in front of me.
Okay. Oh, here it is. It was invited by a guest of Representative Andre Carson as a +1 to the Muslim Congressional staff for Iftar in the U.S. Capitol, where I utilized the opportunity to lay the foundation for future communication with Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, as easier as it would be not to engage in conversation. I believe to my core, not communicating is even more risky. I had no idea what to expect when I entered the room, but the reception could not have been warmer. Hopefully it can lead to mutual understanding somewhere down the road, even if it's a remote possibility.
Right. Even if it's a remote possibility. So my tweet was very direct, that I'm acknowledging there's a remote possibility that something could come out of this. If you look at the photographs, it wasn't where I posed standing next to them in a friendly, like we're old bosom buddies. No, it was a conversation where you see there was in a certain intensity, and I wanted to convey that. So a photo has 1,000. What is it? A photo is worth 1,000 words. So the person looks at it and doesn't say, "Oh, he's chumming up and they're having a nice conversation." That was the imagery that I wanted to project.
And now,
sensitivities involved.
What I think some people would wonder is, where would you draw the line? Would you meet with KKK people? Would you meet with neo-Nazis, Kanye West, Nick Fuentes? Is there any red line where there are people who, even their leadership and they're influential, you say this person is too vicious?
It depends for what purpose we're meeting. Again, I didn't set out that morning to go meet with those two individuals. I was in a room with them and I introduced myself. Now, I didn't have to go over to them. I could have sat in my chair, but there was no purpose for me being in that room if not to meet people and to network and to perhaps down the road develop a relationship. To answer your question directly, meeting in and of itself, if it serves a constructive purpose, should be applauded. This whole notion of not speaking to someone is absurd. Now, obviously, if you're going to meet with an anti-Semite and has no constructive purpose, don't meet that person. Don't meet. What's the point? Now, if I'm sitting on a train and this Fuentes is there, I'm not going to leave the train. I may not speak to him, but I might say, "Hey, why did you say this and that thing?" Again, it depends in what context that encounter ensues. It really depends on how on how it develops. Here I was at an Iftar dinner, so there was an opportunity to engage in a conversation without justifying what she said, without condoning what she said, without agreeing.
You're not giving her credibility. It's not like you're walking into her office and posing for a photo op. It's a circumstantial thing. I can understand that. And what is the constructive purpose? If you could just describe that in a concrete way.
We don't know. I don't know if I will ever see that person again in my life. I mean, I probably will see her walking in the halls of the Capitol as I did in the past. Now, I never walked over to her as I ordinarily would with other members of Congress and introduced myself because I knew this was a hot potato, like I should be careful. So I would never, if I would see her in the halls of the Capitol, I would just, walk past her and she would walk past me. And I don't think she noticed me because, there's a lot of people coming and going. But at the end of the day, an opportunity presented itself. It was an iftar. Obviously, they're Muslims, so they're there. I was invited because I was a guest of someone. I'm a lobbyist. It's in the U.S. Capitol. It's neutral territory. People today, unfortunately, feel that if I don't agree with you, then I have no business talking to you, and you don't have business talking to that person too. And if you do, you're doing something wrong. That's absurd. I remember when I was invited by then President Trump, the Trump White House had a Hanukkah reception.
Yeah.
I was invited, and obviously I went. And people in the Democratic Party, friends of mine, would call me and say, "Ezra, how dare you go to the White House meeting with that president, with that person," whatever, I don't remember the exact word that they used. And I said, in 1943, Jews, Rabbanim, marched on Washington, could not get in to see President Roosevelt because he wouldn't let them in through the front door, literally. I will never refuse an invitation by the President of the United States. Now, I'm not equating Trump to Roosevelt. Roosevelt has Jewish blood on his hands. He could have saved Jews, and he didn't. It's a fact. It's not my opinion. That's a fact. And I'm just saying that I will engage in conversation if I feel it has a constructive purpose. Now, this is my line of work. I know people will criticize me for saying it, but I'm not going to apologize for it. And I understand I look a certain way, so people will equate me with being a rabbinic figure, even though I am not. I'm a private businessman. At the beginning, you alluded to me as Askin, and I said, let's redo it because I am not an Askin. I am a private businessman. I just paid my taxes today, and I earn a living, and I happen to look a certain way. And I understand that it comes with a certain level of responsibility because at the Iftar, Congressman Carson said, oh, we have with us a rabbi here today. And I interrupted him and said, no, I'm the son of a rabbi and I look like a rabbi, but I'm not a rabbi. And he
And
smiled.
and I don't know if you meant to equate Trump and Ilhan Omar either, because even those who have issues with Trump.
But I don't want to equate. All I'm saying is that the notion that you cannot approach someone because you disagree vehemently with that person is wrong, and it's counterproductive. And it was never Jewish policy to be that way. People met with Adolf Eichmann if it served a constructive purpose. Now people will throw that back at me and say, what constructive purpose? And I don't know what that constructive purpose will be, but that's none of your business. I was having a conversation, and I was trying to just be cordial and be respectful, and life goes on.
Now, I want to ask you, and you alluded to this a little bit, do you have some sort of das Torah? Do you have Rabbanim who these types of situations where it really could be a shaila, I think, hashkafa, maybe even halacha, people who are arguably supporters of terror, or at least support, the Palestinian cause, the anti-Israel cause, the BDS movement. Do you have any das Torah that you consult with?
Oh, look, I did, to be honest, I didn't ask a shaila before. I didn't, and I don't think there was a need to ask someone before. I would probably ask my father, the Liska Rebbe, if anyone, I would ask him. And I've had certain conversations with him over the years. Can I say that I asked this question? I don't recall. I will. It's actually, you give me a good idea. Over Shabbos, I will ask him that question. Curious to hear his response. But then again, we're talking about an environment in which I met with two House members who, by the way, have influence in the Democratic Party. Whatever you say, that's a fact, and people in the Democratic Party can deny it. But
no, they do. I mean, that's what scares a lot of us, but they do. They are, very influential.
They have a voice. I understand it's only a handful of members who identify as the squad, but at the end of the day, there's still a certain level of influence.
I agree with that.
And that means that we have to work with them. Doesn't mean that you're not going to vote for them, but you cannot ignore them. You cannot ignore them. Now, you have to be, I understand that we have to be open-minded, and we shouldn't have our heads in the sand and say, oh, we're going to work with everyone, and people are now going to twist and turn my words and say, Ezra said we should work with them. I'm not saying. I said there's a responsibility to develop a certain level of communication. Now, again, maybe it's going to lead nowhere, and I'm not responsible for the Jewish community. I'm one person. As I said before, I run my own company, but I did it because an opportunity presented itself.
Now, there were those critics who compared this, or at least connected this, to the fringe extremist groups who go and meet with the Ayatollah and go and meet with Mahmoud Abbas. I'm sure you're familiar with these extremists who, in my opinion, are reprehensible, are just disgraceful people. Can you respond to that?
Mahmoud Abbas, I mean, everyone meets with Mahmoud Abbas. He's the, I think you meant Ahmadinejad. I know that,
Ahmadinejad, they went with the Ayatollah, and then the Turk
correct. Well, there's a major difference, and I'll tell you why. Because they proactively get on an airplane or made it a business to go and take pictures with them and hug them and praise them and encourage them. I mean, it's apples and oranges. It's, again, it's the mushal and the nimshal don't jive. I was in a room at an iftar, and I introduced myself, and I had a civil conversation, which I think is the right thing to do. And I think it's the responsible thing to do when you're at an event with members of Congress who happen to be Muslim and I happen to be Jewish. I think there's a certain level of cordial behavior that's expected, and we didn't get into any substantive conversation about any of the hot button topics that they're most known for. And we spoke about the ends of Ramadan, and that was the whole conversation.
All right, so it begs the question: if you get a phone call tomorrow from a senior staffer of Ilhan Omar saying, you know what, I want you to come down, you met the Congresswoman, we want to have a conversation with you, what would you respond?
I would go, sure, absolutely.
So you would go? Okay, so
Absolutely. She's a member of Congress, and you want to have a meeting. It depends. Why not? Absolutely.
again, but it just to bring this to its logical extension, it is possible that the Neturei Karta also was at some kind of iftar, was at some kind of function. In other words, you're a step away.
They go again.
And I'm just wondering how people are going to kind of view this. Is you're a step away from then going and having that meeting and getting on a plane.
They're going on an airplane, and they're hugging Ahmadinejad, and they're encouraging him, and they're praising him. You can't equate the two. You're not being fair. It's again. I'm repeating myself. It's the Mizrach and Ma'ariv. It's the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. If I went to their office and I walked out of the office and I said, I'm here with Representative Omar, and I got to tell you, she's doing a fantastic job, and I support her, then obviously you can try to make an equation, say I'm supporting what she supports. Sitting down across the table from someone and having a conversation cannot be compared to praising them or to encourage them. It's very simple. Every level-headed person will agree with that.
I totally understand. I respectfully, I don't think that I disagree. That I agree. I respectfully disagree, but I do respect that point, and I do appreciate that you clarified. I do appreciate your distinctions. I understand the distinctions that you're making. Again, I don't know if that's going to make every critic, totally calm down and answer all their questions.
It probably won't. Look, today, if you're not in my camp, then you're an anti-Semite. You're a Russia. You need to be destroyed. That's the nature of campaigns today. We have we can't accomplish anything in Washington because we cannot.
Yeah, it's way too polarized.
It's very polarized, and it has affected us in the Jewish community, and it was never like that. We are a minority within a minority within a minority. We almost have no power. And the only way we can accomplish anything is by developing relationships and by, again, trying to maximize and leveraging a relationship. You never know. I remember years ago at the city council, there was also there was a council member that was allegedly anti-Semitic, and I also maintained a relationship. Now, I didn't tweet a photo with him. The occasion didn't present itself, but that person was once responsive to me. Again, you never know when a relationship could benefit. Now, people, again, I'm going to try to play devil's advocate. People say, oh, it's all about Ezra Friedlander's clients. Yes, it could be it's about my client, but most of the time my clients happen to be Jewish organizations, or sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're foreign governments. But yes, again, I am not a representative of the Jewish community. I understand that I have a certain responsibility because of the way I look and the way I dress, and I respect that and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, I am an individual.
And it sounds like you feel like that would make a very big difference. And it sounds like you agree that if you worked for the Aguda, if you worked for an Askan organization or Askanas, an activist organization, a Jewish organization, then you could understand how this criticism would be more warranted. Is that where you're driving at?
Oh, absolutely. If I work as in a Jewish official in a capacity that I'm like what you just how you just
characterized, yeah.
I would obviously ask in advance. Absolutely. I mean, even excuse me, even in my line of work, in my representation of clients, you always need to receive prior authorization to make an offer, or when you write something, you represent your client. Everything has to be discussed in advance. Obviously, I understand that if I showed up at that Iftar and I say I'm here as a representative of the Jewish community and I'm glad to be here, and I would put that in a tweet, people understandably would be upset, and rightfully so. But I came as an individual, as a private business person, and I had a civil encounter with two members of Congress. Now, obviously, very, very controversial. Again, rightfully so. And that was the extent of it. And if you think into what I'm saying, it won't look as outlandish as one may think off the cuff.
Yeah, okay. And I guess we're going to leave it there. Ezra Friedlander, the lobbyist, not the Askan, and but somebody who I have a lot of respect for, and I'm very grateful for the work that you do. And I appreciate you explaining your side of the story.
My pleasure. And I want to leave you with this one notion. No political party represents Torah values. No political party understands truly our way of life. Obviously, if you're a conservative Republican, there's a lot that we can identify with. I get that. Believe me, I get that. But also there are issues that in the Democratic Party, there are certain positions that are also somewhat in sync with us, and it's too complicated a topic to get into it. My point is that when you are a Yidden Gullus, understand that the boundaries, I live in Borough Park, the boundaries of Borough Park are maybe 60th Street or 65th Street. There's a whole big world out there. We need the cooperation of everyone. And you never know Vidi Yeshia Kim. I don't know how many people understand Yiddish, but I assume many, many, many people. When you need someone's help, suddenly you're scratching. You're saying, okay, how can I get to A and how can I get to B? And I don't want to bring other people into this conversation, but I've been around the table where people approach conservative Republicans through the efforts of people who had relationships with them. People approached very progressive Democrats. We needed the cooperation, not we, but they needed the cooperation of them. And you'd be surprised how cooperative how cooperation is given when there is a relationship there. The world of politics and governance is built solely on relationships. It sounds like I'm throwing out a word, but a lot of it boils down to that.
Yeah. Look, you're somebody in the trenches, so you're somebody who lives it and breathes it. And it's true. Despite my having very strong political views, Al Tiftahu bin Adivim, and it's been a Masera in Klal Yisrael for, I guess you'd say, thousands of years to cozy up with any malchus or any position, any person in a position of leadership for a time when we're going to need them. We can agree on that.
We're in Gullus. That's a fact. No one could dispute that. Now, if you want to be involved in the Republican Party because you feel that's closer to your point of view, God bless you. You should do that. But don't demonize the other side. Now, if you're a Democrat and you want to be a Democrat, God bless you. Don't demonize the other party. And at the end of the day, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a registered Democrat because I live in New York City. And if you're not a Democrat, you're not a part of the system. But I don't identify. This is what I'm wearing now is not a Democrat and not a Republican. I have a profession and I have my own political views, and people really don't know what my political views are. If you would have dinner one night, you'd be very shocked at what I'm going to tell you. But at the end of the day, there's a certain professionalism that one must exercise when you represent your clients. And then you can have your own personal views. And one doesn't have to come at the expense of the other, even though people say, oh, you're now selling your soul because you have clients. No, you're not selling your soul. It's like the plumber that puts his hands in the garbage. You don't call the plumber and say, oh, wear a suit. So is politics sometimes in governance, sometimes in the gutter? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. But you know what? There's a need for it. I know that I don't like to end this conversation talking about, plumbing and getting your hands dirty, but people sometimes need to get off their couches and understand that it's not one size fits all. There's a lot of nuances.
Okay, we will leave it right there.
Thank you.
The lobbyist, Ezra Friedlander on the Windows podcast. Thank you.
Take care.